Good morning. Thank you very much for coming this early on a Saturday morning. I hope that coffee will keep you strong for our day-long symposium. I'm Yuki Miyamoto of DePaul University and a co-organizer of today's symposium. Despite her strong resistance to me doing so, I feel compelled to offer some brief remarks. By way of introduction, Dr. Norma Field. This is primarily because this series of atomic symposia is Norma's brainchild. For a number of years, she taught a course at the University of Chicago called Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and Beyond, in which she brought attention to the danger of nuclear weaponry and nuclear energy. Her commitment to this issue is based upon her genuine concerns for the populations that are exposed to radiation, and she has firmly stood by her commitment, prioritizing the alleviation of the plight of these exposed to radiation, rather than treating these people as mere subjects of research interests. Dr. Field has given talks on Fukushima in both English and in Japanese, and has translated a booklet by the complainants for the criminal prosecution of the Fukushima nuclear disaster, entitled Fukushima Radiation, Would You Still Say No Crime Was Committed? This is available as a Kindle edition. Without further ado, I would like to turn the podium over to Dr. Norma Field, Professor Emerita of East Asian Civilizations and Languages at the University of Chicago.
Good morning. Good morning. I've already told Yuki I'm getting my revenge later today because it's ridiculous, this U of C practice of double introductions, which could be triple and quadruple, right? Logically. Anyway, I'm so glad to see all of you here. I'm so grateful for people who have traveled near and far to be here early in the morning. If I start mumbling, please raise your hands because this is for recording and that's for magnification. So can everyone hear me now? Okay, good. We have a number, my co-organizers have also volunteered to be interpreters during the day. You'll see their badges. Please call on them for any sort of help. This couldn't have done by any one person. It really is the brainchild of a group of us who started watching videos together shortly after the Fukushima nuclear disaster. And we've argued and talked and worried together and cooked up these symposia, and we've just been studying, and everyone has been wonderfully creative and commonsensical, which is necessary. I'm very grateful to the Committee on Japanese Studies at the Center for East Asian Studies for sponsoring an occasion like this. It's not everywhere that you could have something like this take place today. The Japanese government is very, very interested in declaring that Fukushima is over. The Tokyo Olympics are happening. Time to applaud Japan's recovery. So I'm grateful that we have this chance for honest and critical reflection. I'm very grateful to the University of Chicago for having that capacity today, too. I'm so grateful to Connie Yip, the Assistant Director for Programming. She has held our hand and given us a lot of wisdom along the way in today, too. I really want to applaud Myra Yochun-So, who's not here. She's the designer of these buttons and the poster, and I'm sure they're going to be selling on eBay, aren't you? But don't take more than one. Don't be greedy. And I'm thankful to our assistants here today with the videos and everything else. Okay, atomic age. History keeps overtaking us. When we began planning Atomic Age 1 in the fall of 2010, we had no idea that the Fukushima nuclear disaster would have taken place before it began, before the symposium was to take place. When we began planning Atomic Age 4, we hadn't anticipated the intense anxiety all of us who are alive today would be experiencing about the possibility of nuclear war. It also has followed, this anxiety has followed quickly upon the United Nations passage of the treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons, a treaty which I note the United States is not signing on to, nor Japan, which touts itself, the government touts itself as the only country to have experienced nuclear bombing. And nor did we know, of course, that ICAN would be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. So despite the fact that we haven't anticipated these things, I can say we've had two overarching premises for this series. The first is we have wanted to challenge the rigid, easy to understand, but strategic separation of nuclear weapons and nuclear power. The history of that is something that needs to be much better known, even though a lot of sincerity went into on some parts, for some parties, into coming up with something good for humanity out of this development. Nevertheless, I have noted how much easier it is for people to oppose nuclear weapons and how very hard it is to see the relationship to nuclear energy. There's a thoroughly permeable boundary between the two, and the one often enables the other. The second premise is that nuclear weapons were developed in order to protect us against them, and that's what they continue, that's what sustains the United States as a security state. By their very nature and the nature of weapons testing, US citizens have been harmed as much as anyone, in fact, if not more. There's a Japanese journalist who came up with a very compact phrase, which I can't reproduce in English, but he says, because the United States is a great nuclear power, it is also a great, ironically put, nation of hibakusha, people who have been exposed to radiation. And I want to, because the university is observing a very significant development in its history this year, the 75th anniversary of the first nuclear chain reaction. And many of you will have seen Henry Moore's famous sculpture, Henry Moore, who was part of the nuclear freeze movement as a citizen in the UK. Because we're in that, and because I'm very grateful that this program is included on that commemoration calendar, I want to also invoke something that's not been brought up much in this 75th anniversary commemoration season, which is the participation of the University of Chicago, along with other institutions, in human radiation testing. I wish very much to make this a part of the 75th anniversary, make it a part of the discussion on campus and elsewhere, much as other institutions have tried to grapple with their relationship to the institution of slavery. Different in sort, but also very, very grave, is the relationship of an academic institution to this kind of technology. And there are many, many examples that are given in a 1986 report, which you can find easily online. Just remember the title, American Nuclear Guinea Pigs. It was compiled by Ed Markey, presently senator from Massachusetts, then a US congressman. American Nuclear Guinea Pigs, 30 years of radiation testing on US citizens. And there is one particular, they are all horrific. I'm not at all interested in weighting the horrors, but there's one that stands out, and that is 1960 to 62 experiment, human ingestion of fallout, in which 102 University of Chicago students and staff were fed either real fallout from a Nevada test site, or simulated fallout from the Nevada test site, or something else, a different form of fallout. Again, I emphasize this is no worse than testing on children with disabilities, trying to find out if exposing prisoners' testicles to plutonium would make them infertile, would make them sterile, or any of the numerous other experiments you will find chronicled in that document. And elsewhere, there are other reports. But I just would like us to think about it. Keep that in mind as part of the legacy of that momentous experiment. Now, I want to move on to Fukushima. Fukushima, I think, is very much part of that legacy. As I said, the Japanese government is interested in announcing recovery. Mandatory evacuation, even mandatory evacuation areas have been mostly opened. Cutting off housing aid has created a de facto forced return policy in the rush to prepare for the Tokyo Olympics. And I'd like you also, every time you hear the Olympics, ask yourselves to be thinking about whether it's really responsible to have young athletes, not to mention all who will gather there, be running around there, just being there, exerting their lungs and all their muscles. But just keep that in mind, not to mention the fact all the people who are living in areas like Tokyo with hotspots. In any case, one of the problems with this announcement of recovery is that people who are most vulnerable cannot voice their anxieties because you are raining on the party of recovery, right? Which pits the most vulnerable people against each other. The extraordinary numbers of children being diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Prefecture is considering scaling back on that testing because the reports are causing anxiety. Well, if reports are causing anxiety, what you do, you stop looking for it. Right? That's one solution that the Pediatric Association of the Prefecture came up with. So these are the issues that we are confronting right now. And by the way, we, apart from the university, we organizers are hoping to ask you to donate to a fund. There's a box in the back in literature to the 311 Thyroid Cancer Children's Fund. It's to support the families of children who've been diagnosed with thyroid cancer, not just in Fukushima, because you probably know radioactivity never stops at prefectural boundaries. So just keep that in mind, and you'll see more in the film. Today's films start us from what is perhaps a less polemical site, documenting changes in plants and animals, who do not, of course, speak in the noisy, our particular kind of noisy language, but as we can see, will be speaking to us. And that will be, that's what our director, honored guest today, will be telling us more about very soon. Couple of practicalities. It's a very long day. Thank you for starting out with us. Lunch will be served upstairs. Write your questions here on these slips. They'll be collected, and they'll be addressed in the last panel of the day. Ask us for help. I mentioned that earlier. Turn off your cell phones right now, please. And I'm not going to engage in a long introduction of our guests for all of our speakers, because I wanted to maximize time for their speaking to us and engagement with you and each other. So please refer to the program for their bios. I really want you to, I want you to join me in welcoming Director Iwasaki, who has practically a half-century career in making documentaries of wildlife and multiple awards. I think, having just turned 70 myself, I think of the energy and resolve it took for him in his 70s to decide that the Fukushima disaster had to be documented, and that what he had dedicated his career to could really come to life in this new way. So please join me in welcoming Director Iwasaki.
皆さんおはようございます。My name is Iwasaki Masanori. I'm filmmaker and director, but I can speak English very well, so I speak Japanese. これからその映画のことについてお話ししますけれども、どうしてこの映画を撮るようになったのか少し振り返りながらお話ししたいと思います。
I'd like to say a few words now. I'd like to, no. Sorry. I'd like to, can you hear me? I'd like to say a few words now about how I came about making these films.
私はこの映画に携わるようになってやったのは20代後半ですけども、30代になってディレクターとしてフリーランサーで、日本の野生動物ワイルドライフを中心にテレビ番組を9年間やりました。
I got into the film world in my late 20s, and it was in my 30s that I became a freelance director. And for 9 years, I made TV programs about Japanese wildlife.
その中でいろいろな動物に出会いまして、その代表が日本ザルです。モズという生まれながらに手足の不自由な猿の、お母さんになってからの記録を19年間続けました。
I met many animals in the course of making those films. And in the course of that time, I ran into a Japanese snow monkey who had disabilities in her hands and legs and had a baby. A baby. And I followed this snow monkey for 19 years.
アメリカのライフの表紙も飾ったように、皆さんご存知かと思いますけど、温泉に入る猿です。
You might know from a cover of Life magazine, these are the monkeys that bathe in hot springs.
僕が興味持ったのは、どうして手足が不自由に生まれたかということなんですけども、2つ考えられます。先天性のものは遺伝ですね。もう一つは食べ物によって後で影響を受けたか。つまり餌付けされた猿なので、主に疑われたのはカナダや、アメリカもそうだった輸入大豆です。防腐剤がいっぱいついたのをそのまま猿に食べさせたというのが一番疑われました。
I began to ask myself, why was this monkey born with disabilities? Of course, we could conjecture that it was congenital, therefore hereditary, or it could be environmental reasons, especially the feed. And the most likely hypothesis I came up with was, since these monkeys are provisioned, that it had been eating soybeans full of preservatives, imported from Canada and the United States and modified.
そのモズという猿はその後子供をたくさん産みました。7頭、猿は2年に1回子供を産みます。で、その子供はまた子供を産むというのを撮影してきましたけども、その系の猿は一頭も生まれませんでした。
This monkey with disabilities, the mother, had 7 babies. Monkeys have a child every 2 years. And these babies, of course, had many other offspring. And among them, none was born with disabilities.
その頃、日本にある野猿公園には、そういう系の猿があちこちで生まれました。1970年代に大問題になったんですけど、これは後でお話しするhayama先生が詳しいと思います。モズについてはこのくらいにしてください。
During that same period, there were some monkeys born elsewhere in Japan, and many of them born with deformities. It became quite a big social issue in the 1970s. We'll go to that later. Professor Hayama will be speaking to us more about it since he's an expert. I won't speak any more about Mozu here.
あとは犬足ゴールデンイヌご存知かと思いますけど、日本では絶滅の危機にありましたので、この生態記録も 7年間続きまして映画にしました。日本では卵が2つもあるんですけども、最初に生まれたヒナが後に生まれたヒナをつつき行動と言いますけど、つついて、最後は1週間ぐらいで死んじゃうんですけど、兄弟殺しという名前もついてるんですけど、これはイギリスでも確認されていることです。
After that, I followed the golden eagle in Japan, which was facing extinction. They lay 2 eggs, and the chick that hatches first will pluck away at the second chick, causing it to die within a week. We call this, I don't know, fratricide, sororicide, whatever their sex is. They are also known in England.
それで僕はこのアメリカやモンゴルに行ってそのゴールデンイーグルの生態繁殖を見たんですけど、こちらでは2羽とも巣立つんです。それはなぜかというと、やはり餌が豊富かどうかの問題だろうと思いました。
And after that, I came to the United States and I went to, excuse me, Mongolia, and I found out that there that both eggs will hatch and the chicks grow up. Why is that? I think I am conjecturing that it's because food is plentiful in those areas.
その他テレビ番組をやりながら資金をなんとか貯めては映画に作りたいと思ってこだわってきました。もう一つ紹介すると、雪広スノーレオパードってご存知でしょうか。ヒマラヤの奥地にいるヒョウです。
And then as I made these TV programs, I kept taking off because there were films I wanted to make about other animals, including I just would like to mention one I made about the snow leopard living in the Himalayas.
こちらも絶滅危惧類に指定されていまして、ですけど何の保護もされていません。
Also designated, feared to be on the verge of extinction, but utterly unprotected.
幻と言われているそのヒョウを取りたくて3度もネパールのヒマラヤへ通いまして、どうにか撮影して映画にしました。
Wanting to take this fantastic creature, I went 3 times in Nepal and finally was able to make a film.
そのプロダクション群像社というのを仲間と立ち上げたのが40年、1981年ですけども、それから30年経って僕が70歳になった時に一応小さなパーティーをやりました。
And then I set up the Gunzosha production company, and at 30 years after founding, when I turned 70, there was a small party.
それでもう70歳になったらいいかと思ったら、この福島の原発事故が起きました。
So having turned 30, I thought I'd done enough. I could sit back now. And then the nuclear disaster struck.
1年間テレビ番組や新聞のニュースを見てまして、自問自答しました。まだ自分でやれることがあるかどうかということです。
I watched TV shows and read the newspaper for a year and kept asking myself, is there something left in me that I can do?
1年経った2012年、カメラマンとサウンドマンと私の3人で、とにかく福島へ行ってみようということで、カメラとマイクを持って行きました。
A year later, in 2012, with a cameraman and a sound engineer, the 3 of us, we decided, in any case, let's just go to Fukushima and see what's there.
今日これからはシリーズ2を見ていただくわけですけども、長期戦になると思って、最初から思っていましたけど、今5本目、5作目ができてほっとしているところです。
We're about to watch Series 2, Episode 2 in the series. I knew from the beginning this was going to be a long battle. Just completed Series 5, which we will watch this afternoon, and I'm feeling just a little bit relieved.
時間だったそうですから、この辺でやめますけど、後で質問なりまたお話ししたいと思います。
黒沢監督の名前を取ったこととしてことですね。
はい、ノーマさんになりたい。
She told me to say this.
生き物の記憶っていうのは、皆さんご存知の黒澤明黒澤監督の映画のタイトルです。ビキニ諸島で核実験をやった時に日本のフリューマンという乗ってる乗組員が被爆して死んだ事件です。ご存知かと思うんですけど、黒澤明はそれを題材に映画を作りました。7人の侍はご存知かと思いますけど、最もお客さんが入った映画ですけど、この生き物の記録は惨敗だったそうです。映画会社はすぐに打ち切ったそうです。
So, Akira Kurosawa, director whom you all know, and assuredly you know The Seven Samurai, made a film in 1955 that was about the time when the U.S. was busily doing atmospheric tests of nuclear weapons in the Pacific, and closer to the water too. And Lucky Dragon and other Japanese fishing vessels were caught in the fallout, and the radio engineer of the Lucky Dragon dies indeed shortly after, an episode you may remember or have heard about. This Seven Samurai, of course, was a huge hit, but the 1955 film it did not attract any audience, and the company stopped showing it right away.
黒澤監督にはお呼びませんけれども、僕はドキュメンタリストとして、福島をこだわって撮り続けたいと思っています。皆さん、ご鑑賞よろしくお願いします。今日はありがとうございました。
So I'm no match for Director Kurosawa, but as a documentarian, I have committed myself to Fukushima and will continue to do so. I'm very grateful to have you watch my works today. Thank you.